Sister banned GF from my room, citing bad influence on her kids. I banned her kids from our vacation. Okay, this is not a vent or angry post. Rather, it's funny and karmic. Before I talk about the current situation, let me tell you what led to this. 4 years ago, the sewage at my sister's apartment clogged and it had to go through plumbing. The burst pipe flooded her unit, which required a week's maintenance. The landlord asked her to move out for a week. She, her husband, and their 3 kids, 3, 5, and 7 at the time, were desperate for a place to crash. Until then, she called her parents for help, but they were out of town. She asked them if they left the spare key with someone or kept it anywhere so she could access it. Mom said no, they carried it with them. The only option left for her was me. Her in-laws live in a different city, and they didn't make enough to check into a hotel for a week. There were other reasons too, which we will talk about in a bit. I wasn't thrilled. My sister's family was known for chaos. Her kids are loud, messy, and, worst, brats. She and her husband have their own set of issues which they don't exactly hide from the world. But I was caught in the guilt, and if I didn't let them in, they probably would have to spend the week in the attic in a makeshift tent. I can't be so cruel to expose them out in this chilly weather. I reluctantly agreed. The nightmare began the moment they stepped into my apartment. I knew it would be bad, but didn't imagine it would be so toxic. Within minutes of their arrival, my peaceful apartment was turned upside down. So the thing is, the kids had been living in a cramped, one-bedroom dungeon all their lives. They didn't even have a proper room. The apartment had a storehouse, which they converted into a tiny kids' room with bunk beds. Hence, when the kids got to know they were to stay here for a week, they were blown away. Not that I have a very fancy house, but a spacious 2-bedroom apartment with a balcony. The kids were excited just to see the fridge with snacks and juice. No, they're not poorly fed, but overly pampered. They want to push all the food down their mouths so that nothing is left for others. Not proud to say this, but my sister did a terrible job raising them. To save her energy, she allows them everything. Screen time, junk food, everything. This is one of the reasons why they couldn't be let in a hotel. More than the hotel booking, they would have been charged for the property damage. The problem is, my sister doesn't care how her kids are turning out to be. She's busy in her own world. As soon as she entered, she dumped her bags by the door and plopped down on the couch, scrolling through her phone like she was checking into a hotel. Her husband shoveled in a minute later, already looking tired and annoyed by driving them here. He sat as far away from her as possible with a disgruntled face. I left them to themselves and pushed back to my room, but when I came back after some time, the kids had torn up my place like a tornado. They had attacked my fridge, yelling and fighting over the TV remote, and left trails of snacks all over the place. My brother-in-law was almost sweating trying to leash them, but I guess it was too late to discipline them. Within a few hours, I knew this was going to be unbearable. My sister seemed oblivious to the destruction her kids were causing, and after a while, her husband also seemed indifferent to everything. I was left cleaning up after them like a reluctant babysitter. After hours of scrolling, when she looked up from her phone and found I had given her my other room, she flipped out. I had a spare room where I had my workstation. I moved to my bedroom and set it up with mattresses and pillows for their comfortable stay. That's all I could do. I don't have a guest bed or anything. She was expecting me to give them my bedroom, and I took up the other one. Why the hell would I, she said. I could sleep on the mattress while giving them my bed. I replied, all 5 of you cannot even fit on the bed, so what's the point? She said, then take your brother-in-law with you on the mattress. My kids and I would take the bed. I said, no way. I'm not leaving my room. Then she suggested, I'll take the kids with me on my bed. I snapped, listen, the spare room with the mattress is all I have. Take it or leave it. She bit her tongue, stormed into the room, and closed the door behind her. I wish my girlfriend was in town so I could crash at her place. The nights were a whole new level of uncomfortable. My sister had a troubled marriage, to say the least, and they made no effort to hide it, even in front of their kids or me. Every night, like clockwork, my sister and her husband would get into these heated arguments. They'd yell at each other about everything from money matters to even accusing each other of cheating. The fights were loud, ugly, and impossible to ignore. At night, while I was trying to wind down with a book, I overheard the arguing in the living room. My sister was saying she had to sleep on the floor because of him, and if he had enough savings, they could have checked into a hotel. Instead, her husband shot back, "We couldn't afford it because you spend money like it grows on trees. Who do you think is paying off your credit card bills every month?" She scoffed, "Oh, please, you barely bring in enough to keep the lights on. Maybe if you worked harder, we wouldn't be in this mess. But, as always, you thought someone would bail us out." This went on for hours. I came out to grab something from the fridge, thinking it might disrupt them and they would stop. Hell no, their voices got louder and more toxic. The kids sat silently in the corner pretending to watch TV, but clearly uncomfortable and annoyed. I felt bad for the kids. I wanted to step in and tell them to cut it out, but it didn't feel like it was my place. It wasn't my marriage to fix. I thought it was just a matter of a few days. Let me play deaf and dumb, but it crossed all levels. On the third day, when my girlfriend came over, she was back in town and brought over some takeout. We planned to spend the evening watching a movie. My sister and the kids were out for a walk, so we sat down on the living room couch. We were watching something on TV while eating when my sister and her kids arrived. Obviously, the kids wanted me to share my food, which I gladly did. Sister, on the other hand, barely acknowledged my girlfriend, even when I introduced her and my girlfriend politely greeted her. Sister just nodded with a cold hi and a fake smile, then pushed off to her room. We let it pass and continued with the movie. Her kids were around, the youngest one was playing, while the other two insisted on watching some Harry Potter movies, so I tuned in for them. My girlfriend was chatting with the kids, and it was kind of fun. After a while, my sister came out of her room and stared at us with disgust and judgmental eyes. She came closer to us and asked, "Is this really appropriate with the kids here?" We looked up and asked her, "What does that mean?" She whispered, "This sitting so close, being all cozy? It's not something the kids need to see." I stared at her, dumbfounded. We were literally just sitting here, watching a movie. What was inappropriate about that? She said, "The kids know she's not our family, and it's not good for them to see their uncle cozying up with a random girl. If the kids ask, 'Who's that woman and why is she sitting so close to uncle and eating from his cup?' what should I say?" I was horrified at her words. I asserted, "Tell them the truth. She's my girlfriend, not any random girl." My girlfriend got uncomfortable and suggested we go inside as the kids were staring at our fight, and it wasn't good for them. She didn't know the kids were used to seeing their parents quarrel every day. I sarcastically let it out, "Oh, so you and your husband can have a fighting match in front of the kids every day, but I can't sit on the couch with my girlfriend because that might ruin them, right? This is your BS logic." Sister got flustered, gritted her teeth, and muttered, "That's completely different. We're married. You're not." It was pointless reasoning with her. I just stormed off to my room. It was so difficult to comprehend that she and her husband were okay yelling and abusing each other in front of the kids, and yet had the audacity to lecture me about setting a bad example by simply sitting next to my girlfriend on the couch. I was in a terrible, terrible mood. My girlfriend decided to stay back. A few hours later, there was a knock at my bedroom door, and Sister's voice from the other end, "Can I get a sec?" I answered with an annoyed look. She whispered, "Wasn't she going to leave? Isn't it late?" I frowned and asked, "Why do you care?" My goodness. She crossed her arms, raised her eyebrows, and said, "My kids are asking why that aunt is sleeping in Uncle's bed when they're not married." I replied, "It's none of yours or your kids' business. Stay out of it." To this, she screamed, "For God's sake, it's my business. We're trying to raise our children in godly manners. Please don't expose them to sinful and evil acts. What kind of example are you setting for them?" I yelled back, "Hope you know it's my house, so suck it up or leave." To this, my girlfriend stood up and said she was leaving. I tried to stop her, but she sighed and said she was tired and frustrated with the drama. I said, "I'll leave too." I picked up my essentials, laptop, phone, etc., and while leaving, told my sister, "I can have the ungodly stuff at her place, right? Or do you have a problem with that too?" While leaving, I locked out my bedroom so they couldn't access it. I spent the remaining days of the week at my girlfriend's place, counting down the days until they would leave. I was in touch with brother-in-law, asking him about the status of his apartment. I dreaded their stay being extended, but thankfully he confirmed they would leave as per their plan. The day they were supposed to leave, I came back. It was so satisfying to see them wrapping up. When they finally left, I swore I'd never let my sister come closer to me or my girlfriend. Fast forward to this week, my parents invited my girlfriend and me for Thanksgiving. Sister and her family were also invited, and as usual, they took over the space with their noise and chaos during dinner. Girlfriend and I casually mentioned our upcoming holiday plans. We were taking a trip to Melbourne with my girlfriend's teenage nieces, 13 and 15. As soon as the words left my mouth, my sister jumped in. "That sounds amazing. You should take my kids too." Her kids are now 7, 9, and 11. Nearly choked on my drink. I nodded, "No way." "Why the hell?" she continued to plead until I sternly replied, "No, that's not happening." She got offended and questioned, "Why not? You're already taking 2 kids, what's a few more?" My girlfriend, as calm as ever, explained, "We've already made plans with my nieces. It's not a group trip for a bunch of kids, it's something special for them." But my sister wasn't having it. She fought back. "That's so unfair. My kids would love a foreign trip. They've never been anywhere nice for the holidays. They've never been abroad." She stared at brother-in-law, bit her tongue, and continued, "Because their father is poor and cannot afford to take us on a nice holiday." It was so embarrassing. Brother-in-law stood up from the table and went outside. I clenched my jaw and said, "Maybe if you worked harder and made money instead of fighting about it and blaming your husband, you could take your kids yourself." Her face turned red. Maybe this was the first time someone called her out for her toxicity toward her husband. She snapped at me, "How dare you? You have no right to comment on my personal matters. If you're so concerned about me, then let my kids have a vacation in Melbourne." Then she started crying that I was making fun of her marriage and looked down on them because they made less money. I didn't let her gaslight me and called her out for her BS. Everyone at the dinner table was silent for a moment when my girlfriend told my sister, "But how could you be comfortable sending your kids with us?" She waved her ring finger and said, "We're still not married. Won't the kids witness ungodly things?" I burst out in laughter. I wasn't expecting this response, but it was so spot on. Sister glared at her with raging eyes and said, "You're unbelievable. You guys are really ruining my children's Christmas just to prove a point." She stormed off in a huff, sobbing. But I didn't care. After she left, my parents and I had a great laugh about it. Sister has always been dramatic, and we all know about it, so no one takes her seriously. Mom revealed that the key was under the flower pot when they were out of town, but she couldn't risk having sister and kids in the house by themselves, so she lied about it. I playfully got angry at my mom for making me take the bullet. It was so much fun. Wanted to share it with my community for a good laugh. Edit to add, okay, I got some comments that it was insensitive towards the kids. Really? After reading the whole stuff, is this what you have understood? Update 1. I don't believe I have to write an update. It didn't even occur to me that the drama would continue after my sister stormed out from the dinner table. I thought it to be the end of that matter, but God knows. The day we were supposed to leave for our vacation, there was a knock at the door. I opened it to find my sister standing there with her 3 kids, all dressed for travel, their bags in tow. Before I could react, she and the kids screamed in excitement. "We're ready for Melbourne," she said, as if I agreed to take them. I screamed, not in excitement but anger, "No, you're not!" I didn't care that I was yelling in front of their children. She asked them to get inside while she discussed vacation protocol with Uncle in the hallway. The older one was already annoyed because he didn't want to go with 2 girls his age, his girlfriend's nieces. He said he didn't want to go, but my sister stared at him with wide eyes and they went inside. Then she whispered, "I'm not going, it's just the kids." I replied, "None of you are going, so take them and leave." She asserted, "Do you want to ruin my children's holidays? They're so excited about the Australia trip and you want to ruin it." I replied, "Who asked them to be excited? I remember. It wasn't me. And if not me, then I don't care." She raised her voice and said, "How could you be so cruel to your own nephews and niece? When she can take her nieces, why can't you take yours?" I was so done with her, I said, "You know what? I don't owe you an explanation. The trip is pre-planned with my girlfriend and her nieces, and I'm not going to make any changes for you." She took a deep breath and sighed, looking at their faces. How excited they are. They've been talking about this all week. You can't just disappoint them now. The kids looked up at me, wide-eyed and hopeful, but I wasn't falling for it. I stood there blank. My girlfriend came out of the bedroom and saw the kids on the couch ready for the trip. She was surprised and asked me about it. When I told her, unlike me, she didn't freak out but calmly told my sister, "You had no right to tell your kids they were coming with us. That's manipulative and unfair. We're not taking them with us." My sister got furious and snapped, "You don't have kids, so you don't understand. You can't just say no when they're this excited. You know how hard it is to make them happy?" I snapped back, "That's not my responsibility. You made this their expectation, not me." At this point, she pulled out her phone and called Mom, putting them on speaker. "Mom, can you believe this? They're refusing to take my kids after promising them a trip." Mom probably sighed and replied, "You can't force them, honey. If they said no, you need to respect that. It's not fair to your kids or to them." She still fought back. "Your son is doing sinful things, so at least ask him to take my kids. It will wash off some of his sins." Mom said she is out of this and hung up. My sister's face turned red, but she wasn't giving up. She said, "Fine, I'll leave them here. You can't just abandon them. You'll have no choice but to take them," and started walking out. I screamed, "You really think that'll work? If you leave them here, we'll call the police for child abandonment." I'm not kidding. Her jaw dropped. She stopped and said, "You wouldn't dare." I replied coldly, "Try me." At this, her eldest son came out and screamed at his mother, "Let's just go. If he doesn't want to take us, why are you forcing him? I don't want to go either." The other two followed him and started whining that they wanted to go to Australia. My sister turned on her eldest one like a viper, but he didn't care. He just walked out with his backpack. My sister held the other two and pushed them to follow their brother. While still in the hallway, she called her husband, yelling, "He turned down the kids. This is your fault. If you made more money, we wouldn't have to beg him for the vacation." She was on speaker, and I could hear him fire back, "And if you didn't spend every dime we have, maybe we could afford nice things for once." She was out of sight, yet I could hear her faint voice as she went downstairs. A few hours later, when I was driving to the airport, I got an unexpected call from my brother-in-law. We weren't exactly close, but we'd always been polite to each other, so I picked up. He stammered that he wanted to apologize for what happened. That threw me off. I said, "It's okay. After all, it was my sister's fault and not yours. Unlike her, I can't blame you for making less money." He informed me that my sister had told him I had agreed to take the kids over call, and that's why he let them come to my place. He didn't find out the truth until she went back home ranting about me threatening to call the cops on her. His son told him the whole story.
I bluntly said, "Yeah, well, that's your wife." He chuckled bitterly. "Tell me about it." Look, I'm not trying to defend her, but things have been rough. Money's tight, the kids are getting older and harder to handle, and well, you know how she is. I didn't know what to say, so I just stayed quiet. He continued, "I guess what I'm trying to say is thanks for standing your ground. Someone needs to. I've tried to, but you've seen how that goes." That hit me harder than I expected. He was suffering, and it sounded like he'd been steamrolled by my sister for years. I felt pity for him that day. After the holidays, when I went to meet my parents, I got to know that she lied to everyone, that I stepped back after promising to take the kids on vacation. Apparently, I also threatened to call the cops on her. As soon as I saw her, I told my mom about brother-in-law's call, and she too felt sorry for him. "I wish he could untrap himself," she said. "I guess he's sticking around just for the kids, or maybe due to the finances. I don't know, but clearly their marriage is cracked up."